Hello, I'm Carol Smith. Welcome to View and Do Video Craft Classroom number 7, Picture This Home Decor. Today I'm going to show you how to make family heirlooms using old family pictures and some new ones too. It's an easy technique using Picture This transfer medium and black and white or color photocopies. After you've mastered the easy technique, you'll be able to make sewing baskets, pillows, accessory boxes, holiday decorations, photo albums, and even a family quilt. Be sure to pick up the easy step-by-step instruction guide, Picture This Family, for hundreds of ideas. Now, let's get started. Our first project is an ancestral sewing basket. The hard part, the sewing basket, is already done. It's one that we purchased, but we've added a personal touch to it by adding a picture of Michelle's grandparents. Now, of course, we would not want to ruin the original picture, and it wouldn't work anyway because you can't transfer an original photograph because it's on photographic paper, which is plasticized and would not roll off. So what we will do is make a black and white copy. Now, this was done on just a plain office copier. And we did it at 100%, and you'll notice that it's a little darker. One of the tips that may help you is to push the lightness button all the way over to the right so that the copy comes out as light as possible. Now we're just going to cut it out. That'll be our first step. I'm going to leave a slight margin around it because the picture is slightly irregular in size, so I want to make it more rectangular. Now we're ready to begin our transferring. Now this is wax paper, and we want to put it on the surface to keep any of the Picture This from getting on our work surface. I also have a piece of pre-washed muslin, and I'm going to tape that down, and that's what we're going to put the picture on after we get the transfer medium on it. So I'm just going to tape it down so that as the picture dries, it won't wrinkle up. Now I have covered my piece of cardboard with plastic wrap, and that's to keep it from transferring to the cardboard. Now we're ready. We want to use our Picture This transfer medium, and we will just open the flip top lid and put on a generous amount. I'm using a foam applicator to spread it out. Now we want to put it on thicker than you probably would normally do. We want to put it on about as thick as a spread on a sandwich. Now I've got too much there. I'm just going to remove that. I'll put it out to the side because I got a little carried away. It's important not to get too much, but you want to have enough that you do the transferring. Now I can still see color and see the black underneath, but I do have it covered sufficiently. We'll turn it over and put it upside down. And we can just use the bottle as a roller. We want to apply light pressure. We start in the center and go out toward the edge in all 4 directions. Now the last thing I want to do is to finger press it around the edges because the edges might have a tendency to flip up. We want to make sure that all of the edges are adhered down to the fabric. Now, we're going to let that dry for at least 24 hours, and we'll be ready for the next step. Now we're ready for the second step of the Picture This technique, and it's rolling off the paper. We're going to use a sponge. This one is a little larger than I like, so I'm going to cut it in 2. And we're just going to dip it in the water. We don't need a lot of water in it. And we're going to put some on our picture. Now our picture has dried for more than 24 hours and it's completely cured. Now what I'm putting the water on is the paper. This was where we turned the picture over and put it down on our muslin. And you can see that the color is beginning to come through. You can see the people already. Now I'm going to get all the extra water out of my sponge because I want to use just a damp sponge. That helps me get the paper off quicker. And I'm going to hold the sponge in my hand and use the corner and crimp it down and compress it a little bit. This gives me a little more of a solid surface as I begin to rub the paper off. Now I can tell that it's transparent enough. That means it's soaked through the outer paper and it can now be easily removed. We're just going to start rolling in the middle and push towards the outside. Now I'm using a firm pressure here and I'm removing the outer paper. There are actually 2 layers of paper and you can see the second one underneath. It's sort of fuzzy and white, and that's the second layer. I call it the fuzz. Now I'm pushing firmly, but notice that I start at the center and go towards the outside. Now this picture, as you remember, was a black and white copy, but notice that it almost appears to be a sepia tone, and that's because the muslin was an off-white color and it's showing through the picture. The transfers themselves are very transparent. In fact, you will need to put them on a very, very light colored fabric or white or off-white. If you put them on a dark color, they will disappear, or they seem to. Now, if people often ask me when I do demonstrations how much pressure to put on, they're afraid to push very hard because they're afraid they will rub the color off. But I assure you there's no danger of that. If the picture was properly applied and was thoroughly cured 24 hours or more until all the moisture was gone, then you're not going to rub it off. In fact, if you were doing this on the shirt, we could even wash this in the washing machine and dry it in the dryer. However, this is for an accessory, so it won't be laundered, but it is that durable, it's launderable. Now, I'm getting off 90% of the paper now, but there is still a thin film of paper on the surface, and you can't see it because it's wet. But what I like to do to make it easier, the paper removal easier, is to wait 15 or 20 minutes until it dries a little bit. And then you could see that that film would come back across there. And a lot of people think that it grew back on there, but it didn't. It's just that it dried and is apparent again. So I want to show you after it's dried a little bit, about 20 minutes, then you can take your sponge. Do not re-moisten it or re-wet it. Just use the damp sponge and use a circular motion, clockwise and counterclockwise. That will remove that paper even more, that thin film that's across it. And you want to continue this motion and again put pressure on. Don't be afraid to rub hard, and that will remove the rest of the paper. And after you've done that the 2 applications or removals, then you want to let your applique thoroughly dry. This is going to be an applique that we're going to put on our basket. Let it thoroughly dry and we'll be ready for the next step. Now, our picture this applique is dry and we're ready to proceed with the next step. We're going to cut it out. And we're just going to cut right along the very edge of the photograph. Remember, I left a little edge around it because it was irregular in shape. I want to cut all the fabric away. Now, before I do anything else, I want to trial place my picture on top of my sewing basket, and I want to make sure that I have the same amount of space on all sides. And to mark that, I'm just going to put straight pins, because once I get the adhesive on the back, I don't want to I can't trial place it then, it would be too late. So we just put pins to mark the location, one at each corner. Now I can pick it up, and I'm going to use the picture this to adhere it to the top of the sewing basket, and we just put on much less than we did before because we're not transferring, we're just adhering it to the top. We use our foam paintbrush to spread it out. Again, a minimum of adhesive on it, just enough to cover it all over. We'll pick it up. Be sure you get it right side up or the right way. Don't want to put it upside down. And put it in place. We'll take the pins out. And I'm just going to press it down with my fingers. This is a padded top, so it's not one that I would normally roll. So we press it down with our fingers, and we're ready to embellish it. Now, I thought it needed a little bit more than just the picture, so I've added some lace to it. And this is an off-white lace to complement the color of our sewing basket. And we're going to use glue and wash to adhere the lace to the basket. We're just going to put a line all the way around. Another reason I left an edge around the picture was the lace is going to cover the edge of our applique, and I don't want to cover up any of the image. Now I'm going to start at a corner because that's where I'm going to end again, and I want to put it up on the picture covering the edge. And when I get to the corner, I'm going to use a pin to help me turn the corner because this is a gathered lace, and I can sort of create a nice fluffy corner there. So I will turn it. In other words, I'm mitering the corner, and I'm going to put the pin in there. In fact, a couple of them. The padded top makes it very easy to do this. Now I want to put some lace under here so when it dries, that'll be glued down, and use a pin to hold it. This is such an easy project. It would make a wonderful gift for someone in the family. Now I'll put a pin here. I'm going to push the lace up on the picture and make sure it's straight all the way around. Now when I get to where I started, I want to create a little bit of fullness there so I don't have a blunt edge. So I'm going to cut it out here and then just tuck that under. I want to put a little bit more glue under there. And put a pin in it. Now, if you need some more pins around the lace between the corners, you might want to just add one or two more pins. Now you want to let it dry a few hours and it's ready to give as a gift. Our next project is an easy ornament to make. Now you can do it in red and green as we've done here for a Christmas ornament, or you can do it like I've done in Victorian colors. These actually are the colors of my bedroom, and this is my daughter, and I'm going to hang this finished ball in my room. Now I took my billfold size picture of her and took it to the color copy shop and got a color copy. I got an enlargement, and I also had them reverse it so that when I put it face down, then it will look like the original picture again. Now I'm going to crop it because I'm going to just use her face, so I don't need to make a transfer this large. I've got a piece of wax paper under there. And I need a foam paintbrush. Here's one right here. Now we apply the picture this transfer medium to the surface. Now we want a generous amount so that we get a good transfer. And we want to put enough on so that we really can't see her face. A nice thick covering. Now again, we're doing the applique method. We're doing it to a piece of pre-washed muslin, and I've taped it to a board covered with plastic wrap. Now I pick it up carefully by the edges, turn it over, put it face down on the muslin, and I'm going to apply light pressure. Let me use the bigger bottle. I put the bottle in the center and roll it out, up, and all 4 directions. Now the last thing I want to do is to finger press around the edges so that all the sides are down. Now that's all there is to it. I'm going to let it cure for at least 24 hours and then we'll be ready for the next step. Our next step is to roll off the paper, and we've let it dry more than 24 hours, and we're just going to take our sponge. Now I've cut this sponge in half so it fits my hand a little better, and I'm just moistening the top. I don't want to use a lot of moisture, just enough to wet the top of the paper. And I'm going to let it set for a minute. And you'll see that I can already see color under there. Now remember, this was the back of the picture because we turned it over and placed it face down. Now I'm going to take the excess moisture out of my sponge because I've got plenty of moisture on there, and by taking the excess water out, it enables me to be more efficient as I'm rolling the paper off. Now I'm going to just start in the center here and make a hole. And there's her eyes. Let's see. Now notice that I'm holding my left hand so that it helps me get a better grip on the paper. I'm rubbing pretty hard here, putting some arm pressure because it is not going to mess up my transfer. The color is not going to rub off. And I want to get as much of the paper off as possible. So I rub either between my fingers or I hold opposite the direction that I'm pushing. And I push from the center to the outside. Now remember, there are 2 layers of paper, the outer layer and the fuzz. And I'm certainly getting the outer layer off, but I'm also, because I'm putting more pressure on as I roll, I'm also getting a lot of the fuzz off, which will save me time later. What I like to do is do the removal in 2 steps. Get the big paper off and as much of the fuzz as I can, and then let it dry for 15 or 20 minutes until the surface of the transfer dries out a little bit. One way you can speed this up is take a paper towel and just dry the surface. That will enable the fuzz that is still left on the picture to become visible again. Then you can more efficiently remove it. Now when it becomes visible, you want to use this motion. Crimp your sponge down with your fingers and rub in a clockwise and a counterclockwise method, and you'll see that the little paper fuzz things will come off and you just push those to the side. Isn't that an incredible transfer? Looks just like that picture I took out of my billfold. Now, that's about it. We're going to let it thoroughly dry and we'll be ready for the next step. We're going to assemble our ornament now, and we take a 4-inch styrofoam ball and 2 7-inch pieces of fabric round. And I've already started and put the back on to save us time, but I'll show you how to do the front piece. I'm just going to turn it over and lay my ball in the center and just pull it up at say 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. In other words, opposite each sides on the ball. This helps me distribute the fullness evenly. Whoops. Now I go on opposite sides and put a pin in. See, when I do it in quarters, then I don't have all the fullness on one side. Now, again, I divide that fullness in half. All the way around, just dividing the fullness in half. And we just keep dividing it on down until we get it all pinned down. I'm pulling a little bit from the bottom too so that I'm getting it tight on the front side. Now we're going to cover this raw edge with lace, so I'm not too concerned that it be. Let me move this pin a little bit. I've got a little bit, I can feel that there was too much fullness there. That's the nice thing about this method is it's adjustable. As I'm going around, I can distribute the ease. You'll need a number of straight pins for this. Now, as you can see, I'm taking all the fullness out of the front. I think I'll go one more time around. And I can begin to pin it down now. The gathers. Meaning I will pin on top of the fabric and go ahead and pin the pleat down. You don't want the pleats to be too big, and you want enough so that you don't have any big spaces in between them. Now my ball is tight enough on the front that I can add the lace. And we're just going to take this white lace, and this is the kind that you can thread a color through. And so we've threaded 1/4 inch satin ribbon in the pink color all the way to the end. We just wrap it around to cover our raw edges. Bring it up to the top. We'll cut off the excess. And pin that in place. You want to pull it tight here before you pin it down. Now you want to put a couple of pins in, and you might just slip them under the ribbon so that that holds it on. It's pretty tight anyway. Now we want to make a bow to go on the front, and we're going to use our 1/4" ribbon, and we're just going to make a loose loops around our hand, 4 of them. In fact, I'll just use it all because I don't have much more than that. Now I'm going to pin it in the middle and put it on top where my lace met. I'm going to pin through all of the loops in the ribbon, and then I want to distribute my bow. I just pull out the loops and fluff it a little bit. Now we want to make a hanger for it, so let's use some 3/8" ribbon, which is a little bigger, and we'll just decide how long a hanger we want. I don't want one very long, so I'll make one about 6 inches long. And we just overlap the end and pin it into the center. Now we have our hanger for our ornament, and we're ready to put the picture on. Now I had rolled all the paper off and it was dry, and I cut it into a circle. You can use anything around the house. This is about a 2 1/4 inch circle. So we're going to use the picture because this is an applique, so we just squirt a small amount on. We're not going to transfer, so we just need a little bit to adhere it to the ball. We use the foam applicator. Spread it out. Now notice I hold it down because I don't want it to get away from me and slide across the glue that's on the wax paper, because I don't want it to wet the surface. And it is pretty slippery under there because remember, all the paper's off of it. Now I'm going to place it on the ball in the center to line it up. And then because this is a round surface, I'm going to use a little bit of tape. First I'm going to pull it a little bit. I can stretch the transfer slightly, and so I just want to pull it taut in the middle, and then I'm going to use the tape to hold it down until it dries. I'm just taping it to the fabric because we're going to create a decorative edge around it in a minute, but we want to make sure it's glued down all around the edges. I'm taping perpendicular to the transfer. We just make sure that we do about 8 pieces of tape so that all the fullness is worked in. Now we're going to let this dry, and we'll be ready to do our decorative edging around the transfer. We're going to decorate the transfer. Now it's dried and we can begin. We're going to use the Fashion Show Dimensional Paint. This is the Rose Pearl color. The first thing we need to do is to make a hole in the bottle. And we're going to do that with a paper clip that I've straightened out. I'm going to use a mitt to hold it, and I'm going to heat the tip. Now just stick it down in there and burn a nice round hole. Now that pushes the plastic out so that I know that the hole is round. I want to push the paint down into the tip, and first I want to try it just to make sure that it's coming out, and it is. Now I want to show you a little trick. When you're outlining on a round object, I have a roll of masking tape here, and I'm just going to put my ball into that roll, and then I can turn it and go around, and I know it won't roll over on its side and mess up my painting. So I'm just going to hold it in my hand, and I'm going to use the tip just as it is because I want a nice wide line, and I'm going to put a good thick bead around the outside. Now I'm resting the tip on the edge of the transfer so that helps me steady it. I also use my little finger to cheat, and I put it on the ball to help steady my hands. Now the paint looks real pastel and sort of opaque when you put it on, but it's going to dry and be a deeper color and have a real nice pearl luster to it. Now I want to check to see if it covers the edge all the way around, and it does. Now I want to make this little edging on it that sort of looks like lace, and I'm going to show you a trick. I can do that with a piece of tape. I'm going to make a fine line tip, and I'm going to take about 4 inches of tape and put it on my tip. I'm going to put the left edge of the tape right up the center, about 1/4 of an inch up from the base. And I'm just going to twist it around. I hold it real tight between my 2 fingers up at the ends so that it forms a cone. And as I turn my fingers, I go up a little higher to support the cone. The tape, of course, has adhesive on it, and it sticks to itself, and it reverses direction. And as I turn the bottle in my left hand, it rolls back down, and I'm just adhering the tape firmly all the way up and down. Now I have a little piece left, and that's going to be my pull-off tab. I just push that down because this tip is removable, and I can put another one on there. This one's disposable. I'll just throw it away. Now I want to test my line and see how thick it is. Now I can't wrap it on the table. I shake it down like a ketchup bottle. Oh, that's a nice fine line. In fact, that's a little finer than I want. So I'm just going to snip the end of it down about 1/16 of an inch. Oh, perfect. Okay, now I'm just going to create this lace edging. You can do this without a pattern. You just want to make little loops under the big line. If you feel more comfortable, you can come from each side. The nice thing about the fine line tip is that it enables me to put the paint just exactly where I want it to be, and gives me a little more control. Now these are not exactly all alike, but when the ball is finished, it will look fine. Lace is very irregular. We just connect the lace pieces together, and then I want to wipe my tip, and I want to put the little dots in the center. This is almost like decorating a birthday cake. reminds me of that. I almost get hungry every time I do this technique. Now, wasn't that easy? I have a convenient holder and I'm just going to let this dry and it'll be ready to hang in my bedroom. Our next project is a Victorian lace stocking, and the picture is a very old sepia tone print. Now, of course, I would not want to transfer this picture, so I have taken it to my office copier and made a black and white copy. Remember to lighten it all the way to the right, as light as possible. Now, we're going to cut out the picture. Going to leave just a little bit of a white edge around it. And we're going to begin the transferring. We're going to use the Picture This transfer medium. We want to flip it up, put on a generous amount. We're going to use our foam applicator to spread it out. Now we want to put it on thick enough that it's very gray, that we can't see the image. Now I hold it down with my left hand. That keeps it from wiggling around. You don't want to get any of the transfer medium onto the back. And it has a tendency to slide if you don't hold it down with one hand. Okay, now we're just going to pick it up. I've got pre-washed muslin on a piece of plastic covered cardboard. I've taped it down and I'm ready to apply my transfer. Put it face down in the center. Now we want to apply some light pressure. We use the bottle as a roller, put it in the center, roll it down, roll it this way, all 4 directions. Now the last step is to finger press it around the edges. We want to be sure we get a good transfer around the edges. Now we're going to let that dry for at least 24 hours and we'll be ready for the next step. Our next step is to roll the paper off. I've cut my sponge in 2 and I'm just going to wet my transfer. The black and white transfers soak up the water very quickly. You can see that it already looks black. Now we don't want to add a lot of water, just enough to wet the paper. Remember, this is the paper that was on the back of the transfer. And when we turned it face down, then we just had the paper. Now I want to wring the water out of my sponge so that I have an almost dry sponge. It's just damp. Now I'm going to start rolling in the middle. I'm pressing firmly here and just pushing the paper to the outside edge. Now because we're using an off-white fabric, the picture, instead of looking like a black and white copy, almost has an old look to it, again because it's on off-white fabric. The transfer is more or less transparent and allows the background color of the fabric to come through. Now I'm rubbing firmly and I want to get off all of not only the outer paper but also the fuzz. And I'm holding my left hand and rubbing close to my fingers so that my fabric doesn't wiggle too much. Especially when it's a small piece like this. You want to hold it very firmly with your left hand, or the hand that you're not rubbing with. You might be left-handed. Now we want to do the removal in 2 steps. It's easier if you wait about 15 minutes in between rubbings. And what that allows it to do is to dry the surface. Now you can also use a paper towel if you're in a hurry to dry the surface of the transfer. I'm using the other half of my sponge here. And that allows you to see the paper that's still on there. There still is a little fuzz. And what we do is crimp down a corner of our sponge and go in a clockwise and a counterclockwise motion. And I'm rubbing very firmly now, so that I get all the fuzz off. And you can see that there are still little paper rolls coming up because that fuzz that's still on the surface, even though it's invisible at this point, you'll see it if you let it dry a little bit. And you can use the wet sponge again as often as you need to get all the paper off. And there's Michelle's mother when she was a little girl. Now we're ready for the next step. Our transfer is dry and I've cut it out, and now we're ready to apply it to our finished stocking. Now, this stocking was one that we made, and the pattern and instructions are in the book that I mentioned before, Picture This Family. But you can buy stockings that look very much like this, and you may want to save time and purchase a pre-made stocking. Now, we've already put some lace on this one, and we bought this lace and we wanted a little bit of glitz in it, so we put some gold cording through it. We just threaded it through. And we've already glued it on the top and on the bottom, and we're ready to apply the transfer to the stocking. Now, we just turn it over and put the Picture This on it. Now, we don't want near as much as when we're transferring because we just want enough to adhere it. Let me get a foam paintbrush, and we'll just spread it out. And we want a thin coating. Hold your hand on it so it won't scoot around and get transfer medium on the front of your picture. Now, turn it over, and I aligned it with the vertical lines in the quilting because I think it would show and look funny if you didn't. Now we just finger press it down. Now we're ready to go around and outline our transfer, and let me move this. Now, we're going to use the lace, and we want to be sure we have the right side. We're going to use glue and wash to adhere it. And it has an applicator tip, so we just make a bead around the transfer. I'm going to do it a little bit at a time. I'm going to get that up off of my transfer. I'll just pull it back up onto my stocking. Now I'm going to miter the corners of this because this is not a gathered lace. So I start with the mitered corner and I go around. Now I want to put the gilded edge up on the transfer. When I get to this corner, I'll miter it again. And then you have to cut the other way to start this corner. Now we put the bead on down. Well, first let me cut this. You miter it just like a picture frame. We trim it again to get the right shape. Cut that little triangle off. Start it in this corner and go down. Cut out from the corner. And we'll just cut this triangle out here. Now we came out just about right. Now you may want to put a little bit of glue on those corners to make sure that they don't wear. Of course the stocking probably won't ever be laundered, so it probably doesn't matter, but I just like to be sure. Now we just finger press it, and we're ready to put the bows on. Now I've used 1/4" satin ribbon, off-white in color, and I just tied a simple bow, and I'll just glue those on. I put them on the corners. Just put them in place and hold them down with pins. That just makes sure that they go in nice and firmly. Now I'm turning the streamers on my bows the opposite way that I did over there, so it doesn't matter. I think I like this better. Now we want to put one more down here. And one up at the top. Now you want to just leave it like this probably till morning and it will be ready to hang or to give as a gift. Isn't that an easy technique? Look what beautiful family heirloom quality pieces you can make with Picture This. It's an easy technique, and remember to pick up that book, Picture This Family, for a lot more ideas. I've enjoyed being with you today, and now I want to show you some more of the projects from the book.